For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Welcome to Let's Get To, the baseball podcast from the fans' perspective. Now here's your host, James Christopher.
Hi, and welcome to Let's Get To. I'm your host, James Christopher. I was doing that newscaster thing where you dramatically sip your coffee, which I don't think is actually coffee. I think they're drinking water on set, but baseball is back, everyone. So we're allowed to, I guess, be a little weird. And I want to start out the episode with a shout out and a toast. Dink. To my good friend, the Hitter Sports. Now, the Hitter Sports changed his profile photo, and that is what accounts for news in the Corona. That is sports headlines. When someone you think is really good talking sports changes profile photo, you want the world to know. But he changed it to his coffee cup, the Savages in the Box thing, which, as an aside, one of the coolest things to come out of sports. I really wish that had happened to the Astros. That would have been so much fun. So, but he changed his profile photo. He's excited about baseball. And I'm going to be honest. I woke up this morning with a very different show in mind until I saw his tweet, because we should be excited. And there are a lot of reasons to not be excited. There are a lot of rule changes that I don't like that are weird. The universal DH, I don't know how I feel about it. I'm very on the fence. On the one hand, we're playing, true outcome baseball where home runs are strikeouts. And so, yeah, having another bat in the lineup, it makes for a better game. I wish we could go back to the 80s, 90s baseball, as I talked about before, where it was more hit and run, bunting, stealing, that kind of thing. I do think we'll go back there. I think Alex Bregman said something to the effect of, baseball always changes. So that's neither here nor there. The universal DH doesn't bug me. The runner on second's silly. What's next? We each get 3 ghost runners. I don't know why that makes any sense. I don't know if they're expanding the playoffs. I know some of that's been kind of bandied about. I'm for some of that stuff, not all of it, but I mostly am just upset that we ended up at a place with the deal and with the number of games that we could have gotten 2 weeks ago. And I think it's, I woke up this morning thinking of the quote from the movie The Crow, of which I'm a huge fan, of which is one of my stated filmmaking influences when I'm doing interviews and stuff. And there's a great line in the movie that says, "Childhood is over the minute you know you're going to die." For me right now, childhood ended when I realized that Major League Baseball, the Major League Baseball Players Association, so Manfred and Tony Clark, and the Houston Astros don't actually care about me. And it sucks, and it's hard to get wrapped up in it's hard not to get wrapped up, I should say, in kind of what the point is. But I do think that there's still some time for baseball to do the job that it's supposed to do. And it isn't just pure entertainment. I mean, but that is what they are. They are entertainers, right? As we've talked about before, to mention Aaron Judge, because we did a shout out to the hitter. Aaron Judge's ability to hit home runs is only something we value because we all collectively decide to value it. If we woke up tomorrow and didn't care about baseball anymore, Aaron Judge would not inherently be owed the money that he will eventually get. I don't know what his salary's like. So I think that they can still serve that purpose. They can still entertain us. They can still bring people back together. It just sucks that they could have done it earlier. And I do worry about where this leaves us for the offseason this year is going to be ugly, because now every owner is going to say, hey, remember those concessions we asked you to make?
The baseball podcast.
Well, now
from the
you're going to
fans'
have to make them, because we're going to suppress the free agent market.
James Christopher.
It's going to happen. We're going to have a CBA argument. We're going to literally be right back here. In about a year and a half, I'll be another, yay, baseball's back, late episode. But I'm going to do my best to bury that. I'm generally a positive person, and I want to thank the Hitter Sports for putting me in a much better mood about this, because it's going to be fun. We've not really been friends during an actual baseball season. It's going to be fun to check in on each other. It's going to be weird that the Yankees and Astros won't play in the regular season this year, because they are, I think, an emerging rivalry. And I think that would have been fun to do that with him. So, I approach baseball a little differently than most people. Again, I try to be positive about it. I love baseball. I love baseball fans. And so, we're going to have Jess and I back on to talk about what's the changes that are coming. We're going to have Andy and Scott. It's probably a good thing that I'm going to roll into both of those interviews in a better mood, because all three of those guys can be Debbie Downers about stuff, which might be why I picked them for this episode. So we'll be back. So stay with us.
Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball. And now, the Big League Chew, an eye on the majors. OPPO Talko, a fan's view of the show.
So we have an exciting episode of Let's Get To today, because we're going to bring together now 3 segments and really just talk about the fact that baseball's back and what's that mean. So I'm going to introduce the hosts of all these segments. And I want you, if you're wearing something special, then I want you to show off what that is. And I know that I know Jess will appreciate this. I'm wearing my Rojo Johnson shirt. And if you remember the story of Rojo Johnson, a few years ago, when the Express were the Astros affiliate the first time, they started leaking these grainy videos of this pitcher from Mexico who was making his return, and the Astros had signed him. And they built this anticipation for a week on both the Express website and the Astros. And you roll in, and it's Will Ferrell, who threw a pitch at a Nashville Sounds, at an actor in a Nashville Sounds outfit, hit him. He charged the mound. Will Ferrell had 6 beers hidden behind the bump and started spraying him with beer. A 5-minute foot chase happened, and that was the career of Rojo Johnson. And it was the 10th anniversary, so there we go. Now I'm going to introduce down Scott McIntyre, host of the Big League Chew.
Hey, I am merely wearing the River City. There it is. Sorry, looking in the camera and pointing the wrong way. I'm wearing the River City Rascals away jersey, the now dearly departed River City Rascals of the Frontier League, formerly, because their owner ran them into the ground. I don't have a Sid Finch jersey, but I feel like I should, since you have the Rojo Johnson shirt on. Other than that, I'm just drinking some coffee. Hi there.
Yeah, me too. Down below that, we have Jess Canasser, who's one of our most frequent guests on myriads of segments, really. Jess, I see that you're wearing something special today, too.
Yes, I got the 2013 World Baseball Classic T-shirt, which was given to all participants. The final was held at, what was it back then in 2013? AT&T Park? Whatever phone company park it was called back in 2013. And of course, now it's not a phone company at all. But I actually got to participate in the opening ceremonies for the championship game. And my father and I and all the other participants wore these shirts. And we were assigned to we got to hold the giant flag, and we held the Cuban flag. So
cool.
There, every year there's a picture that comes up on Facebook of a very grainy paused DVR of my dad and I and one of my fraternity brothers holding corners of the Cuban flag as the opening ceremonies, where all the participating countries had their flags unfurled, and then the countries that were just participants in like the qualifiers were held by single people, just one person flag bearer. But we got to hold a flag that was, I don't know, it was big in size, and we had to practice for an entire day to do it. And we were one of the few groups of people that didn't screw it up.
Well, there you go. Congratulations. And then Andy Tom Chesson, I'm sure, is wearing some corporate polo he has.
I am wearing something special. I'm not going to show it to you because it is a replica of Josh Reddick's American flag Speedo because baseball's back. And I wanted to honor the only thing in Houston from 2017 that wasn't accused of touching the trash can.
People want to see it.
All right, that wraps us up for this episode of Let's Get To, everybody. Thank you. All right,
America.
No, so baseball is back, and that's meaning a lot of things. And I'll be honest, I have increasingly gotten a little bit more excited. I wouldn't say that I'm excited, but I wanted to kind of go through some of the things that are different and kind of get some of our gut check reactions to what we think about them. I made the joke in the opening that to me, starting on an extra inning with the runner on second, it's like assigning each team 3 ghost runners. I don't know what we're doing, but let's just kind of go through, first of all, gut feelings. We'll start with Andy, then Jess, and Scott. Gut feelings on baseball being back, period. How are you feeling?
I'm still at the point where it's like 50-50 about whether or not the season's actually going to happen. I know everybody's on board and the players finally acquiesce to the owner's draconian demands, but there's still this whole COVID thing coming out. And while I do understand that the media has nothing better to do right now because, our country's not in crisis, than announcing every single positive COVID test that ever comes out about anybody remotely famous, not mentioning recovery or anything like that, because why would we talk about those? It's still a lot. There's still no plan for fans to come to the stadium. There's still no plan for what happens if your entire outfield comes down with the COVID. So there's a lot still to be worked out, and there's still, to a point that we were talking about a little bit earlier, what happens if you're Justin Verlander or your Blake Snell opts out of the season because of safety concerns or stupidity concerns in Snell's case?
Well, first of all, people would universally go, who is Blake Snell?
He was the 2018 Cy Young Award winner, asterisk.
Jess, what about you, man? Like where you are when you saw the news that it's finally happening?
Well, to Andy's point first, the clause that exists where players who are either high risk or living with people who are high risk, because it sounds like there's not going to be much in the way of isolation when they're not at the ballpark. They're going to be able to go home to their families. And the couple high-profile names, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, and I think Garrett Cole, all have wives who are expecting to give birth at some point during the year. And so, yeah, baseball is maybe back, but hockey, MLS, NBA, the leagues that have plans in the United States to continue are all doing the pod thing. And baseball is, at least right now, not planning on doing the pod thing in full. At least that's what it seems like. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on with that. But overall, I mean, I'm with Andy, 50-50. It's baseball is back, but getting into the rule changes as one half of the National League fans in the room, at least teams that are still in the National League, a designated hitter coming in, even if it's a year, not excited. I mean, especially because my team is going to struggle regardless, and now they have to find an extra bat, which it sounds like it could be Yasiel Puig. So 2020 couldn't get weirder if Yasiel Puig ends up as a San Francisco Giant. But to the extra inning rule, as someone who's worked in minor league baseball through the entirety of this protocol, runner on second, and seen it at 2 different levels at both high A and double A, it makes sense from the standpoint only of preservation of arms, which this year, 60 games in 66 days, you want to preserve arms so that you're not throwing out, since you can have, taxi players who can come in and
anybody else imagining Danny DeVito and Christopher Lloyd as the taxi squad? Am I the only one? I was
more of an Alex Rieger guy.
Okay. Scott, let's jump to you real quick. Cause I want to back through the rules overall.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Did this podcast just become unplayable now? Like,
You fed it. You fed it to me. You fed it to me. I can't do a Mary Lou Henner impersonation, so you
Okay.
get Andy
God.
Kaufman.
that was pretty good,
Yeah,
Andy
sorry.
Kaufman, and your video's off. So I thought you were hitting an actual, like, you had it queued up like a regular radio station. Andy, Scott, overall, just gut feeling. Are you excitement level of it being back? And then I do want to work through these rules.
It feels really weird, and I mean it's really the rules, right? That's where the detail it's all at. It feels very strange that it's coming back. It feels I am excited as a St. Louis Cardinals fan because I believe we have a very deep bullpen, and I think the deeper your bullpen is, the more successful you're going to be this year. In what's happening, and those teams that are reliant upon one or two strong arms and don't have something really deep are going to struggle. I think it's a year made for the Rays, if you want to know the truth. It feels very strange in how we're coming back. To Jess's point as well, that's what I wanted to talk about. With the potted system of the NHL and the NBA happening at the same time, and they're going to be in postseason, right? They're in postseason while baseball's doing the yawn short season. And both of those have seemingly had players and owners that have come together to find something, whereas baseball has kind of argued with each other over everything they possibly can. I just don't. I'm not sure that fans are going to react well to Major League Baseball being back.
Andy, you had a reply. I could tell.
Well, the yawn part. Nobody here wants a 60-game season. Everybody wanted more games. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn there. I think the interesting thing is it could work that you have 16 to 20 teams that are in a pennant race literally from day one that stay in that pennant race until the last week of the season. So I think there's some artificial excitement built just based on the fact that at this point they're not going to expand the playoff pool. They might. But you've got a lot of teams who the good teams, the great teams, the Yankees, the Astros, the Dodgers, aren't going to be able to create the separation that they would normally be able to create over a 162-game season, where truly August and September are yawns because you've got a 12 to 15-game lead. I mean, we might win. The Astros might have a superior level of talent to the rest of the division, but might win the division by 5 games. And that would be a pretty big lead in a 60-game season. So I think there's going to be some artificial excitement built. But, the large majority of the population ignores baseball anyway during the summer, at least prior to the All-Star break, and then it starts picking up. So I think there is some positive. I don't want to be all doom and gloom about this whole thing because I think there's some benefits to a short season. I don't think they're long-term benefits, but they can work if baseball was smart and took advantage of them. Now, we all know that baseball is not smart, so who knows how they're actually going to work with that.
But here's what I was thinking about that, Andy, because I agree with you. I'm right. There is artificial excitement and very real excitement in Miami when you think, hey, at worst we can only be 60 games out of first this year. But it's an exciting time from a sports fan as you get into late August, start of September. College football is going to be starting. The NFL's ramping up. NHL, NBA are finalizing their playoffs, and Major League Baseball is in the middle of a pennant race. Where I think baseball is going to run into a problem is if we have that second spike that occurs in the September timeframe when people are talking about, and that goes back to what Jess was talking about a minute ago. We have in Jim as well. You have the COVID. That's still the virus is still the thing, right? It's still the big headline that we have to most be worrying about, and that could knock out the MLB playoffs. And if that happens on top of everything else, there's a lot of problems for baseball.
Jess, what about that? Something that I think both Andy and Scott hit on. I think that this has been such a dramatic back and forth, argued through the media, which we've discussed on this show as a colossal mistake. How many people are going to look at a 60-game season? Like, I know that all of us are going to watch. Like, let's assume that all of us are going to watch because we do a baseball podcast, which means we care a little bit more than the normal person. How many people are going to be like, you know what, I saw them argue. There's only 60 games. And like you said, NHL became a lot more appealing to people because this pod thing sounds kind of cool. And you are right that college football will be starting. Like, how many people are just not going to tune in at all, do you think?
Well, I think there is a great advantage with fans not being allowed to go see games. And I think that's going to allow teams to sort of be off the hook, and owners and the league as a whole just sort of get off the hook a little bit. There's talk of certain events having higher ratings or highest ratings ever because nobody's going out in public, so they're staying home and watching on TV. The KBO has high ratings in this country, and the German soccer league is playing their games, and the Premier League is playing their games, and people who are thirsting for live sports are watching where they might not otherwise. And so I think if you have Major League Baseball on TV and it's on at the right times of day, people are going to watch it regardless, because they'll switch to it for a few minutes and then be off it. But it's a lot easier to turn something on your television than it is to go to a game, because it doesn't cost anything to turn something on your television, assuming you have the right provider and all that stuff. I don't think MLB TV subscriptions are going to be very high. I think people are going to stay away from spending money on the subscription-based services to see their team's games if they're out of market. And that might be a lot lower, and that may be the best way to track just how popular the return of Major League Baseball is. But I think plenty of people are going to turn it on their television who might not otherwise go to a game, because if they don't like it, they can turn it off after 5 minutes. It's a lot harder to leave a ball game after that same amount of time.
No, okay, good point. We did talk a little bit about the runner on second. Any other new rules that you guys are just like, this seems like a weird direction to go? Because I think one of the things that's framed my conversation with Jess about the minor leagues, and Scott and Andy's conversations about the new CBA, which we will get into, everything that Manfred's done through this seems like he's putting himself in a weird position to take advantage of a pandemic for his own goals. What are some of the other rules that we're looking at for this short season that you guys are a little concerned that make it not baseball anymore?
It's not necessarily a rule, and I don't know that it changes baseball, just more of it's a labor situation issue. But the village in Nashville that they're going to create of the 60-odd unsigned free agents that are just floating out there. I don't understand why they need to do this, when you could just as easily have them practicing alongside whatever major league team, because as I understand it, you're going to have a 60-man roster for each major league team. 30 players at the beginning are going to travel or be with the major league team. The other 30 are going to be at an alternate site. So I'm assuming for a team like Houston, that might be Austin, where you've got –
Houston's looking at U of H, and they're looking at Sugar Land.
Yeah, but that's stupid. If you really need an alternate site, why not go 2 hours away? Because if the spike is bad in Harris County, well, both those things are
I'm not saying it's smart. I'm just saying that is what's happening.
So let's say it's Sugar Land. Why not just have 5 of those free agents who happen to live in Houston practice with that team? Why do they need to go sit in Nashville and create this just weird zombie village of free agents that you might be able to sign, but otherwise you're going to get $400 a week and be happy to get it? Whereas poor Jess,
it's weird because
$400 a week.
Because my first thought on that was, is this Manfred's way of seeing if Nashville is interested in having, a team for expansion later, but you can't have any fans show up, so you have no clue if that's the case.
I mean, are they even going to play games, or
sense.
is it just extended spring training indefinitely?
Oh, I'm sure they'll play games.
Jess, you have a thought?
Even if it's just for fun.
I'd have to think that, if they're trying to keep the taxi squads near enough to their major league counterparts, I know. If they're trying to keep the minor leagues close enough to their major league counterparts, then there's no way they're going to have the minor league teams travel. I would have to imagine the games will consist of inter-squad and really no different than what you see instructional league almost.
What if you're the last guy? What if you're the last guy who gets picked on that team every day? What if you're Jason Lane trying to make a comeback again, and all right, we're divvying up the 30 players. Jason, you're last. I'm sorry,
buddy.
On this team.
We take the Ghost Runners instead of Jason Lane.
That gives you a chip on. That gives you a chip on your shoulder, right?
Now, is there talk? is there talk about expanding the playoffs? Like, is that still a possibility? Because it seems like you can't have a 60-game regular season without expanded playoffs, in my opinion.
I think according to what I've read from The Athletic and the Nightingale and a few other people, it's still a potential, but the issue for the owners is still they want to be done by the end of October. So if you're expanding the playoffs, what you would be expanding maybe, and I don't pretend to know how any of this is going to work, is that you'd bring 16 teams in, but you'd have a bunch of 1 to 3 game series at the very beginning just to thin out, just to say, hey, you made the playoffs, congrats. Good job, Miami. You are a viable baseball city. But then it immediately would go into the format that we understand right now. So it is, from what everybody's saying, still on the table. But if you're really concerned about a second spike, I just don't know how workable it is. I would see reduced playoffs before I'd see expanded playoffs.
The funny thing about you guys keep talking about second spike. Y'all, we haven't finished with the first spike yet. Like, I don't know that this is going to be spikes. It's going to be a thing we live with.
I like waves.
I don't even know that waves count. Like, it's got a crest before it's a wave. Like, it's a tide of crap is really what it is.
I got to
go ahead, Scott.
Going back just for a moment, I think one of the weirdest rules that's happening, and it's not really a rule change, it's a health implementation, right? The plan is 101 pages just on the health, on the things that have to happen. So if a manager comes out of the dugout to argue with an umpire, he has to maintain a 6-foot distance. To me, that's the strangest thing, right? I mean, think about it. You're used to seeing Billy Martin and Earl Weaver up in somebody's face, and Dutch Rennert is trying to get this guy away. Now they're going to have to maintain a respectable 6 feet distance. And does that count the head? Because if he's leaned in like a chicken, trying to bob his head, arguing with the umpire, is it like the maximum distance his head went to 6 feet? Does the umpire, if the umpire comes forward, is it his fault? Or is it the managers? There's things like that are just gonna feel a little different in watching the game. There are things that have to happen.
Could you take out Angel Hernandez by touching him, where he couldn't officiate a game for 14 days?
He gets a 12-foot.
14 days, you're out.
That's the 30th guy on the taxi squad's job. Hey, you go out there and touch him.
So you're just going to see more creativity when it comes to managers getting thrown out, kind of like the old days of minor league baseball. My mind immediately turns to the Mississippi Braves manager who crawled like he was in a battlefield and threw the rosin bag like a grenade, and then walked out center field with second base.
Well, if you're requiring your manager to wear a mask, you don't even have to go to the Bobby Valentine standards of trying to disguise yourself to get back in the dugout. Just stick a mask on and get back in there. They're not going to make you take it off.
Have a wig, mask, nobody will know. They're not going to come close enough to figure out it's you, right? And also, I mean, if you're making a mound visit, if you're trying to discuss strategy, you're not taking somebody out. You're trying to. Well,
anyway.
Do you need to talk to a glove if you have a mask on?
I like
it. Necessary.
My favorite part is the wet rag in the back pocket.
The wet rag is the other one. That is great also.
That's pretty great. So I guess I want to end this with a little doom and gloom and kind of focus on kind of our Jess, what is this going to mean for the minor leagues, and particularly the 42 teams? And I know that you're an employee of one of those teams. I thought to myself when we followed your whole story of leaving Midland and getting hired, and we had you on. We were at the winter meetings together, and then I saw you got hired, and I went and looked, and I was like, well, crap, which I'm sure you did too. What is this? What is this going to mean for that, do you think?
I don't think there is. I think the first thing that I immediately think of is, cool, Major League Baseball is happening. Now let's talk about minor league baseball. And I think that wouldn't have happened until an agreement came to be with the owners and players in Major League Baseball, because now Major League Baseball can start to focus on the expiring PBA with MILB at the end of September. As to what it means to those 42 teams, I think, I still believe that there are minor league teams that weren't on the list, as well as teams that are, that now that it's finalized or pretty much finalized that there's not going to be traditional minor league baseball this year, there are teams both on and off that contraction list that are not going to survive being out of business basically for a full year, not having a full year of revenue coming in, and just won't be able to put out a good enough product, a good enough staff with what money they might still have next year. So I think that, that's, to me, that's the first step in that process of figuring out how next year looks. Because I think ultimately Major League Baseball wants to run minor league baseball so that they can make all of the money off of it. And if minor league baseball is not making as much money, it's still money made by Major League Baseball. So they, at the end, I don't know that they care that much who the 120 minor league affiliates are that play under them, as long as the money that they make in their communities and in their towns lines the pockets of the 30 major league owners. I think that's all that they really care about. So, first figuring out who survives this, and then moving on from there. Because I think it's probably a given at this point that we're going to see 4 levels of minor league baseball next year, and 120 teams. But I think, anybody's guess as to who those teams are, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the teams on the list just can't continue. But, I mean, obviously there's, I think, the resignation that short season is gone. That short season is just done and dusted, which leaves, I want to say it's 12 teams in full season baseball, low A, high A, and double A, that are still on the hook. And so, if they need to get to 40 or 42 lost, they're going to have to eliminate some in full season. Who those are, I mean, I think Major League Baseball is hoping people buy into the return of the league so that they're not paying attention to minor league baseball being cut out of several communities.
Okay, Scott, question for you and then a question for Andy. Scott, I contend that the owners are going to end up winning this long term by basically now saying, hey, players, remember when we danced this really weird dance and you wouldn't give up more on your prorated? Well, now your free agent market's going to be suppressed. Are you seeing a more suppressed free agent market when we come out of this before 2021?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because they can cry foul and say, well, we don't have as much money to spend as well. I think the owners have already, to Joe average fan, have come out looking better than the players on this. I think the owners found a way to win the PR battle. So you're already influenced to be on their side, or the average fan is, I believe. It's just this simple. They've already found a way to suppress the free agent market and not pay certain guys a certain amount of money, because saying once you've reached a certain age, we're looking at other stats, you're not that good. You saw Craig Kimbrell and Dallas Keuchel 10 or 20 years ago would have been making a ton of money on the free agent market. They couldn't find a job for the first few months of the year at the rate that they wanted to be paid. You're going to see more of that. I think you're going to see more star players sit out. It could get so strange that you're seeing better players go to Japan and play as well, because they'll be able to pay more money because they've had more revenue coming in this year. Korea as well. So it's going to be a really strange setup. And if the owners aren't able to get a salary cap in the next collective bargaining agreement, I think that will definitely be a priority for them in the one after that.
Andy, what is this going to all mean for the CBA then after 2021?
Shit show is the only real applicable term. You've got a very galvanized players union. You've got owners who have demonstrated they are willing to let things burn to the ground rather than move off their stance. So it's going to get bad. It's going to get bad before it gets good. We get a break for a year, and honestly, other than media talking about it and people like us talking about it, you're not going to hear a lot about the CBA until August 2021, unless of course there's a work stoppage or something else like that. But after next season, it's going to be bad, and I would expect a lengthy delay to the start of the season. Call it a lockout, call it a strike, call it whatever. To begin the 2022 season, just because I don't see any way for them to avoid it right now with Manfred leading the charge for the owners, with Clark and the executive team leading the charge for the players. I think that those personalities do not work well together, and they've proven over the last 100 days that they can't come to any kind of reasonable conclusion. This 60-game season isn't the result of negotiation. It's the result of both sides digging their heels in the sand and saying, not us, we're not moving.
Okay, one last question then for everybody. Probably could even be a one-word answer. So I'm going to be at the Brazos Valley Bombers on Tuesday to watch some Collegiate Summer League. I'm flying to Normal, Illinois to watch some Collegiate Summer League next weekend. Scott, we will be there together. Jim Crane, while we're having this conversation, has said it is his plan to have fans at Minute Maid Park. How comfortable would you guys be going with social distancing and masks and all that stuff, attending a stadium of that size for a baseball game? Jess, we'll start with you.
I'd need to know how many people are going to be allowed there. That's the biggest thing, because you go to a full ballpark, even the nicest new ballparks, the concourses are jammed. And so, yeah, it's all well and good if I'm going to be sitting 6 feet away from people in the stands, and there's not going to be somebody who, when they walk to their seat in the row behind me, is at risk of spilling their beer or nachos on my head. But when we're walking on the concourse together, how are you going to keep a 6-foot distance? That's just not possible. I see people who aren't able to go to the grocery store and keep their mask on. They wear it when they walk in and then they take it down. So how are you going to police that? And I think there's too many moving parts there to make me feel comfortable personally with it, because a ballpark that is a quarter full is still at least 10,000 people. And so I need to know that. I think, and then maybe this is my minor league brain here, I think there's a lot that you can do to make money as a major league team, getting people out of their homes to where you can monetize the games going on without having them in the ballpark. And I think if Major League Baseball marketing and promotions people are worth their salt, they'll come up with something to monetize this. I don't know if people will buy into it, but I think have a watch party somewhere, have a projected on the side of the stadium, and have a tailgate party where you sell drinks and merchandise and stuff.
Yeah,
fans in the stands, I would not feel comfortable with that, me personally.
Mr. Tom Chesson.
I would go. I don't have much of an issue. My life is pretty much whittled down to the people who live in my house. We're all of the age where even if we get this, the survivability rate and the long-term effect rate is pretty low statistically. So I'm not terribly worried about me catching COVID and having long-term effects, nor my wife or 2 kids. I don't see my parents. They've isolated. I can't see my 96-year-old grandmother, obvious reasons. Also because I don't want to go to Bremont. But regardless of what Jim Crane says publicly, I cannot imagine that the Steinbrenner family and Artie Moreno and whoever owns the Dodgers right now are going to allow any team to have fans when they can't. Because it is an advantage. If you believe the players, hey, we get a lot of energy from our fans. Hey, we win because of the fans.
Believe the players other than Trevor Bauer.
Other than Trevor Bauer, who just wants to sleep with your daughters. And he said as much. That's not slander if he says it. I can't believe they're going to say, no, let Houston have all the fans they want. We're fine with playing in empty stadiums. I just can't imagine they'd allow that kind of competitive advantage.
Scott?
I think it's a PR stunt. First of all, roof open or closed? Because are we indoor or outdoor?
Well, if it's open, I will not be there because it is hot.
96 degrees during a rainstorm right now. The roof is closed.
The roof is closed.
No, Andy's right. I mean, if Jim, this is a PR move by Crane more than anything. So you can say, well, people, I wanted you to be able to be there. And look, Major League Baseball's done it to us again. I personally would not go, even if this was a real thing, because the inside core of me remembers 94 and 95 quite well, and I'm pretty pissed at them again. I don't think that there is a reason in the world that they could not have come to some sort of agreement. and not have it shot down 33-5. I mean, give me a break, guys. You had months to figure this out. I looked at it earlier, Jim. If we were still doing our teams backwards, we'd be in like the 1900s right now. That we'd be trying to figure out who the best 18 players of that time are. So, I mean, forget this. They've had plenty of time to figure this out.
For you, it's not health. For you, it is you ripped open an old wound and fuck you.
It's a combination. Yeah, it's a combination. I want to be part of the solution, not the ongoing problem. That's why I wear a mask in public. It's a stylish mask. It's Joe Exotic, but I do wear one. But I don't. It's Carol Baskin's just obsessed with me. But on top of that, no, I don't want to give them money right now, extra money right now, when my money is what they were complaining about not being able to have to figure out a revenue split between the two. So no, I don't want to reward them in any way. I want them to play. I want the TV contract. I'll watch them on TV. I'll support quietly from home, and I'll wear Cardinals gear while I do it. But no, not gonna do it. Not gonna do it.
Just to add on to Scott's point, I mean, I have the personal mild vendetta of Major League Baseball potentially trying to take away my job, as well as the jobs of 41 other teams, and don't believe that they say they need my money. I don't believe they need my money, but I do believe and know that I need my money currently.
Well, you know what? That's a great point to end on. It reminds me of Andrew Nelson, who's been on our show a bunch, and he constantly says, you guys, MLB is back. Baseball has been back for a little bit of time now.
Lights, camera, play ball. Inside Baseball Cinema.
All right, so we are back here on Lights, Camera, Play Ball with Andrew Nelson, and we have seen the documentary, the only new baseball we were going to get until we finally get some new baseball. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we finally got to see the 1998 documentary. Overall, man, what did you think of how it portrayed? Because these are, again, events we lived through, so it's a little bit different this time.
For sure. I was in junior high when that happened. It's interesting. You know, I got to see this about a week after most people watched it, so I got to see everyone's reactions to it before I watched it.
Right.
And I feel like it's kind of a mirror. Like, if you have opinions or baggage around either of those players or teams or whatever, it's gonna amplify that for you. I thought it was fine. I thought it was pretty fair too. To be honest, most of the criticisms I saw that I didn't think were really fair, but I enjoyed it. You can tell a Cardinals fan made it. It did focus a bit more on St. Louis and on Mark McGwire. To the extent that some of the Cubs fans I saw on Twitter were like, "Oh, Sammy Sosa was barely in it," and like, no, he was quite a bit.
And Sammy Sosa came in second. I mean, let's be honest. Like,
he did. He didn't win.
You know, I think the Astros won 100 games that year and beat them both in the division. Nobody talked about that. That was, I guess, Joe Torre was upset there weren't enough love for the Yankees in it. I'm like, come on, Joe.
There was a little bit of Astros in the beginning there when they were talking about Kerry Wood.
Yeah, let's show that. You know, it's funny though. You're right about a couple of things. I will say one piece of criticism that I thought maybe was fair.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one, like as a filmmaker, I appreciate the fact that filmmaker intent matters a lot. Yeah. What was the point of the film? I think the point in the film when they chose to release it was, hey, let's forget about Corona for 2 hours, which I think it 100% did. I do think some of the steroid stuff was a little glossed over, which I know is a big complaint. Is that one of the complaints you're talking about? You think maybe wasn't fair?
Definitely. It was mostly steroids and Cubs fans crying about Sammy Sosa.
Did Mark let's talk about both of the characters in it, which is always weird to talk about a documentary with characters because they're people. But Did any of them do anything to redeem themselves, do you think, in the eyes of baseball fans at large? It does seem like we're a lot less mad about steroids than we were 20 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, that does bring up one of the other criticisms that I heard was there was a lot of people saying, oh, Mark McGwire was so put upon, and oh, he just looked like he wasn't having any fun and all this stuff. He came off a little better than I was expecting after hearing all that complaint. I thought he was reasonably sympathetic. He didn't, and he also didn't grovel for forgiveness, but I mean, he did acknowledge what he did using steroids, and he acknowledged that it wasn't right and that he wouldn't want other people to do it. He wouldn't hold it up as an example to kids and stuff. I thought that was fairly honest. And
me too.
And I really found it sympathetic. I found Sammy to be fairly sympathetic too. He's the more fun, energetic guy, and
which is saying something because he's clearly a vampire now.
You have to admire his attitude of acceptance and gratitude for what he has had.
Mm-hmm.
That he's not living with a chip on his shoulder saying, oh, the Cubs should be welcoming me back. I deserve this and that. He's I got my MVP. I hit all these home runs. I had lots of fun and I made lots of money and got all these opportunities that I wouldn't have had and stuff.
I didn't know. I didn't know that there was the rift. That was one thing I think that was surprising for me because clearly, when you follow baseball, things like that happen at a local level. I didn't know that he had not been. Were you aware that
not until people were talking about the documentary? And I guess his last couple of seasons in Chicago were pretty acrimonious.
Okay,
but I really don't know anything about it because I'm not a Cubs fan. So,
thank God. Do you think that it's going to help any of them with their chance to get into the Hall of Fame?
Probably not. I don't know. As much as the attitude towards steroids, I think, is softening as people get older and time passes. That window is getting smaller, and baseball writers don't tend to be younger guys for the most part.
Right.
And don't tend to, be big embracers of change, I guess I would say. I think they have, but then I have also heard that there's not a lot of sympathy for the steroid guys in the Veterans Committee either. So.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's such a microcosm of kind of where we are. It's interesting because I think I migrated. I think I definitely was a absolutely not no matter what. And then it is, and then you do see that to some degree, Bud Selig's complicit in the fact that, that it grew the way that it did. So maybe that is the answer. I don't know.
Right.
It's something that definitely kind of got me thinking. I will say that. And and to Mark coming off, maybe people were afraid. Like, I have to imagine when you sit down in that interview, you have to go up with your guard up. You don't know really what's going to be asked. And like the story about how I didn't watch it yet, but the Lance Armstrong doc, apparently he was very prickly in that because that you're sitting, like, everything about your legacy is being questioned. Of course you might be a little defensive.
Yeah. And that's something that I'll say that I think is a big difference between the two of them, besides just their general kind of, Mark is more serious and Sammy is more lighthearted or whatever. Mark McGwire showed contrition and honesty.
Yeah.
And Sammy Sosa is more, what do I have to apologize for?
Right.
It's like, well, you kind of do have something to apologize for, Sammy. I mean, you did hit a lot of home runs. You did have some really good seasons, but you also cheated.
He also cheated. And I guess we don't know if he cheated in 98, but we know he cheated in 02.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he just discovered what the needle was 4 years later.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, there's complicity in Major League Baseball on all kinds of levels. And anybody who says, "Oh, we didn't know about it," is full of crap. I mean, I knew about it as a middle school kid, and our attitude was, "Who cares? They're hitting home runs."
I'll tell you, I knew the terms "the cream and the clear," which I know wasn't those guys, but it was Bonds, before I knew actually what cream and clear was.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I feel a little bit more sympathetic towards McGwire and anybody who actually honestly reckons with what they did. If they're willing to do that, I think they should be recognized because they still made those accomplishments. And steroids probably helped some, but steroids don't help you actually hit a ball. They might help you hit a little bit further, and they might help you avoid injuries, which is certainly something that seemed to really have helped out Mark McGwire's career. But they don't help your hand-eye coordination any. There's a lot that they can't do for you.
Yeah.
But if Sammy Sosa wants to be like, well, what do I have to apologize for? I just played baseball. It's like, yeah, you do have something to apologize for. And I feel like if Barry Bonds came out and said something really heartfelt and contrite, that would probably generate a lot of sympathy for Barry Bonds.
I agree with that. I think also, too, I think Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer before the roids, So that's the thing I think is the ultimate tragedy in all this. At the end of the day, Mark McGwire played first base in the American League. I don't know outside of home runs if he has numbers that were Hall of Fame numbers, but Bonds clearly did.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's Bonds could have been like a surly Ken Griffey Jr. if he hadn't roided up, basically.
Right. I did think that was what was so interesting about the doc, though. I'm glad you brought up the kid, because it felt unnecessary the amount of times they were calling out the fact that they had left. And I understand that at the beginning of the season there was this talk. Yeah. But Griffey was out of the race, really, from baseball perspective. He was out of the race by June, which is still early in a baseball season. They really wanted us to it was almost as if, hey, McGwire beat the guy that is in the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
I think they had to build some drama, too, and try and make it look like Sammy Sosa came out of nowhere.
Right.
To a certain extent, he did. I mean, he hit 20 home runs in a month, which is crazy. But, it was probably a little contrived, I think.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Now, speaking of contrived, let's talk a little bit about the Major League Baseball season. They say it's coming back. I still don't believe it. I think that we'll get some kind of a lockout or some kind of strike from the players. But I wanted to talk about some of the rules that are apparently going to come into place to play, including, most importantly, the runner on second and extra innings. Sure. I'm pretty anti. I wanted to find out where you were, though, on that particular development.
Sure. I'm not really passionate about it, to be honest. I get that it looks kind of junior league, and there's a reason for that, because that's what they do in collegiate summer league and in lower minors and stuff. But people look back on those marathon games and like, oh, it's so great. It's a titanic struggle. And it's like, yeah, but have you ever sat at a baseball game till 3 a.m?
Yes.
Fair.
Yeah. No,
were you still having fun at 3 a.m?
I think that there becomes, I think you become aware that you're watching history. I think you're aware that you are, in viewing something special that you will talk. I mean, does anybody enjoy running a marathon? But they enjoy the aftermath.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are some idiot out there who enjoys running a marathon. I am not that guy.
I'm sure there are.
I'm sure there are.
I'd say what I would rather see than a runner starting on second, as I'd rather see them do the KBO thing and just, if it's tied after 12, just call it a tie. They had like a half dozen of those in their season last year, in a whole season. It probably wouldn't come up that much. And I think it would feel less cheap than putting a runner on second, which feels like an artificial kind of pushing the result.
But what do we do about the nature of baseball is that there's no clock? The nature of baseball is
there still isn't a clock. You can't run it out to the end of an inning. You still have to face every batter until you get 3 outs.
Right. But, I mean, I guess we could – I've always just felt like a tie is like kissing your sister. Should that be the topic of the next, sisters we'd like to kiss?
I don't like ties. I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
But I also see the logic in not dragging out ridiculously long games. I was at the first half of the Twins' 17 or 18 inning game that they played last year, and you could see the hangover on the team for the next couple of games.
Of course, yeah, yeah. You saw it. You saw it in Houston. They went on part of the reason why they got swept by the Athletics is they had an extra inning game with the White Sox followed by Garrett Cole getting scratched right before the start. And so they limped into Oakland with no bullpen. I just feel like, to me, they're trying to address a problem that isn't there. To your point, there's not are there really, if you're not talking about having a lot of ties, if you're talking about having a half dozen ties, for example, that means you're only having a half dozen extra inning games. Is that really the problem we need to be dealing with?
True.
And
it's not that big of an issue.
And any major league team, well, maybe not in 2020, but you lay a bunt down and then you hit a sac fly, and any team can do that. And so I don't know that you're going to have. I don't know that you're necessarily going to fix the problems you think it's going to fix. All right, I'll give you the last word on that, though.
Okay. I mean, do they know how to lay down a bunt still, though?
And now, on to close it out, the right-hander from Houston, Texas, James Christopher.
So that wraps us up. And, again, for as much as I have this trepidation about what's going to happen down the road, and for as much as I am worried that the teams in Texas in particular are going to try to cram people into stadiums because they can, I'm going to do my best to be positive. And I know that when Blummer shows up on my TV and Julia and Todd Callis, I'm going to be back. And I know that Jordan and Bubby will be watching in Oregon, and he'll get his ball. That's what matters. I'm going to get some ball too. So we're going to be out at the Brazos Valley Bombers on Tuesday, and then we're going to be up in Normal, Illinois for the Colonels League on Friday and Saturday. We're very excited. We're going to have a Pride episode on Sunday, so we're going to be talking to some people who love the game of baseball. It's going to be a fun weekend, so I hope everybody is safe. I hope everybody is at least going to put the drama of how we got here aside and just be excited that baseball's back. And as always, let's get to